The second Elite Eight in 3 years for this Matt Painter Purdue team. They get it done in the Sweet 16 this year. A very tightly contested game with Texas. Purdue manages to win 79-77 and even defeated the race to 69, I believe. I know that's a pretty arbitrary number, but for whatever reason, teams that get to 69 first win like 98% of the time or something like that, especially when you're talking about Purdue's all-time history with that stat. So just for whatever reason, something for me as a fan, I always look out for. They were able to overcome that. I think a up and down game from Braden, but a dominant performance from Trey, and just sealed by a game-winning tip-in shot, the first and the last second of a March Madness game in Purdue history. I know there's the 1969 one from Rick Mount that was hit with 2 seconds left on the clock. This Trey Kaufman run tip-in is the first Purdue buzzer beater game-winning shot in March Madness that was made with less than a second on the clock. A massive win, and I think if I would have told you 8 months ago a Trey Kaufman ran offensive rebound is what saved Purdue's season, would you believe me?
Yes. I absolutely shout out my boy Trey, by the way. I don't know if people can see I'm rocking the Trey Kaufman Ren jersey on half these videos. He's been my guy since we recruited him. I was so happy for him. I bought this jersey when Edie still played for Purdue. Let's be clear about that. I was the OG Trey Kaufman Ren fan to the point where I wore this jersey to the round of 64 game in Indianapolis, Edie's senior year, and Trey's family saw me on the street and got really excited because I was the first one they saw wearing it. Shout out Trey, man. He was phenomenal in this game. 20 and 8. 8 for 10 from the floor. The 2 shots he missed like rimmed out or halfway down and back out, and I think Clough got putbacks on both. This was a just dominant performance, and you and I highlighted the biggest mismatch in this game was Trey Kaufman run on the offensive side of the ball because Texas simply didn't have anyone to guard him. Unfortunately, his former teammate Cam Heide was the
recipient
man tasked with guarding him for all of his minutes. 24 minutes for Cam, and he fouled out, which I'm sure plenty of Purdue fans are getting their jokes off about, but truly an unfair assignment to ask him to guard Trey Kaufman around the block the entire game and not get in foul trouble. And that just goes to highlight they didn't really have anyone. I mean, Nick Cody, I thought, gave them some good minutes in this game. Maybe if they played him and Vocatitis together, they would have had a little bit more success, but that's just not something Texas does. We saw them make several defensive adjustments from the Texas that you and I scouted and talked about in the preview. It's not really how they play defensively in this game, but that wasn't one of them, and Trey really feasted.
Yeah, I mean, they doubled him early, and I thought he handled the doubles really well. They stopped doubling him. I don't know why, but as soon as they stopped doubling him, I think Trey just realized, like, oh, these dudes can't guard me. Like, these dudes can't check me. And he went to work, and he had a great game. I mean, he dominated. I think even when Vocatitis had minutes on him, he cooked Vocatitis. And he had that weird play that I think showed me that Sean Miller doesn't know what a hook and hold is, where, like, Trey is like sealing, reaching back. Vocatitis reaches under his arm and hooks him himself, and then wants a hook and hold on. I wasn't really sure what Texas's plan was. You had all sorts of weird Vocatitis and Clough fouls. I think I correctly called that in the preview that those two would spend the entire game in foul trouble because of each other, and that's largely true. He had the crazy Vocatitis elbow to CJ's head, like. Quite honestly, it's good that CJ's okay. That was one of the few plays I've seen in college basketball this year I thought was warranted for an F2. I thought there was intent there, but they ruled it an F1. Titus was able to play. I thought he was okay. He thought he caused Purdue some slight issues around the rim, kind of blocking shots at times and affecting shots at the rim, especially on some of the guards. But he only finished with 2 total rebounds. I think credit to the Purdue front court because I thought they did a good job rebounding this one.
Yeah, Texas only lost the rebounding battle by 1. Purdue had 32 rebounds. Texas had 31. So it's not like Purdue had a dominant performance in the glass as a whole, but they were very successful at keeping Vocatitis off of it. You and I kind of talked about this in the preview. Like, this was going to be a challenge for Purdue's guards to try and box out Texas's wings. They didn't really do that. I mean, Heidi had 5 rebounds. Swain had 9. Mark had 3 on like a bum ankle.
Kendall Weaver had 2, but it felt like he had 7. Like
Every player who checked into this game for Texas had at least 2 rebounds. Vocatitis was tied for the fewest on the team with a couple other guys, but Mark and Wilcher both had 3, and yeah, those 9 from Swain. I mean, biggest mismatch in the game was Trey Kaufman run offensively, Swain on anyone who was guarding him when he was trying to get a rebound, and literally anyone trying to guard Tremont Mark. I think we've gone long enough in this recap without mentioning Tremont Mark. He was arguably the best player on this floor. He might have even picked up a Ken Pom MVP.
He did, yeah.
In this game,
MVP in a loss.
This is pretty impressive. 2-point loss, but even still, 29 points on 15 shots is absurd. He had 3 rebounds and a steal, 0 turnovers, and that was after Fletcher fouled him on a 3-point attempt, jumping into his landing space, and looked like Mark might not be able to go. After every shot, he was, I mean, they said on the broadcast visibly limping, and that feels like an understatement. I mean, he was practically dragging his leg up and down the court, and it didn't matter. Every shot he made, or every shot he took, seemed to go in, and it was one of the gutsiest, most impressive performances I've ever seen.
Yeah, I don't want to get too much further without giving Tremont Mark, and not just him, but Jordan Pope as well, who came out after and talked about how he played on a broken foot, and like that just wasn't announced going into the game. I mean, we knew he was questionable in a game time decision and he warmed up, but I never imagined that he was questionable because of like a fully broken foot from the Arizona, or not the Arizona game, the Gonzaga game. Like that was something where like, oh, he turned his ankle in practice. He's probably good to go, but like he might have sprained it. He's probably gonna have to play through some pain. Playing through a broken foot's not an easy, like that's not normal, or like that shouldn't go unnoticed because that's a gutsy performance. And I thought Pope hit a bunch of big shots. He went 4 for 9 from 3. I thought kept them in it early when Purdue looked like they were capable of running away with it. And then Tremont Mark, as you said, like I have my thoughts on landing space fouls and how they're called. Doesn't change the fact that he got hurt and gritted his way through one of the most impressive performances I've seen in quite some time. One of the more impressive performances I've seen in a March Madness loss as well. I mean, a guy that hits that many tough shots and plays that well on that ankle. I mean, it's tough to see a guy like that lose, and probably a deserving Ken Pom MVP, which is crazy to say on the losing team when the winning team had a guy go for 20 and 8 with it going 8 for 10 from the floor. But he was exceptional. And I think a large part for me was it wasn't even like defensive breakdowns from Purdue that were letting this happen. Like this was Mark rising up and hitting a crazy, ridiculous 3 just 3 or 4 different times. And he's capable of doing that, and credit to him because he hit the shot. And I think Mark and Pope deserve so much credit and so much admiration for the performance those two put out, especially given the injury concerns around them, or not concerns, but actual injuries surrounding them.
Yeah, I thought those two were incredible. I mean, I thought Swain was good too. His 5 assists to 5 turnovers, notwithstanding. I mean, he had 15 and 9. Didn't get his 3-point shot going, but late when Purdue started to try it and pull away and started hitting a couple buckets in a row, and Texas might miss one on the other end, like Swain was like, okay, it's time for me to go get a bucket, and he would just get right to the rim through whoever was guarding him. And other than Trey, who I thought had a couple of really nice defensive possessions against Swain, you kind of called in the preview like that might be Purdue's best matchup. It did appear that was true, but because Purdue was switching so much and they clearly didn't want Trey guarding Swain full time, he was able to get matched up on smaller guards and just shoot over them or get around them. The big 3, Pope, Swain, and Mark for Texas lived up to the billing. I mean, I know Vocatitis has been their best player through the tournament, but he was, I thought, largely a non-factor in this game outside of, his defensive around the rim, like you mentioned, and some of the foul stuff with him. But this was just really impressive from Texas Wings. And we mentioned this in the preview, like Purdue doesn't really have a matchup for most of those guys.
Yeah, I mean, this is the path forward for Texas, was getting good games out of Mark and Swain and Pope. You needed those 3 guys to hit a bunch of shots and get and score to keep up with Purdue. At the same time, you needed Purdue to go shoot 4 for 20 from 3. Like, let's be real about this. It took an otherworldly shot-making performance from Tremont Mark, some pretty interesting officiating. I think we would all agree that was a weird game officiating-wise, flow-wise. And Purdue shot 4 for 20 from three and still managed to win. And I think that shouldn't go unnoticed because that to me, that's a game that Purdue loses a lot of the time. Don't
Well, this
shoot
was the
well.
game. This was the game I thought they would lose. Like
Yeah.
when Purdue was kind of struggling in January, even though they were winning games, the defense wasn't looking good. I was on here saying like this is how Purdue's going to lose in March. They're going to go cold three. They're not going to have an off shooting night and not be able to adjust. And they did in this game. Now they very nearly lost it because Texas was out of this world and Mark nearly carried them to a win on his own, but they didn't. They survived, and right now that's all that matters. Purdue is playing in the Elite Eight tomorrow, and that nothing will change that. Doesn't matter how much they lose by. Doesn't matter if they win and keep advancing. Purdue won this game when they weren't shooting well. 20% from three. The only player to hit a three in this game. Fletch went 4 for 8. Cox was 0 for 4. Braden 0 for 3. Meyer 0 for 4. Benter 0 for 1.
And
no one else could buy a bucket.
Can we talk about how wide open most of them were? Like Omer was taking wide open threes at the top of the key that were just off. Braden took a couple of great looks that like I expect him to make, and they just didn't go in. Same with CJ. No. CJ was really good in this game, though. Like I think
he was good.
The 3-point shooting is literally the only thing I would have on CJ as a negative. He hit a bunch of big mid ranges in the first half to kind of have like a little heater stretch to keep Purdue going offensively when they hit a little bit of a cold stretch. He had 8 boards as well, 2 assists and no turnovers. Not only that, but I also thought it was really important to note that there were 2 different times. I thought that Purdue went into this game thinking they were going to try and hide CJ a little bit defensively to just kind of take the pressure off of him after that injury. I think that they realized very quickly they were going to have to use him to neutralize some of these Texas guards. And credit to him because 2 different times in this game, I think he really forced a cool down on a Texas guard that was on fire. I think Jordan Pope hit a couple of shots early, and I think CJ did a really good job of getting to him after the first couple went in. And, he hit 1 or 2 down for the rest of the game, but it was a lot more inefficient than he was early in the game. And then Tremont Mark. Mark was frying everyone until Purdue switched CJ onto him with about 4 minutes left in the game. I don't know if you noticed that. And
I did.
Mark, especially on that ankle, just he couldn't get space. And CJ is big enough as compared to Braden, who I think was Mark's main matchup for a lot of this game, that he can't just shoot over him, especially on the bum ankle. And so there was one play, it was the and one from Swain at the end of the game. Texas was clearly running a set they ran a hammer screen on the backside for Mark, getting him cutting from the wing to the corner on the backside, and Swain drove to the lane, kicked to Mark. We've seen that play work a lot of times, especially against Purdue, who has some smaller guards. And so if you have an inch of space, you can raise up. And CJ was all over him, didn't allow him to get the 3 off. Who knows if it would have gone in. I mean, he was on a heater. Swain ended up getting the and one, but it was just a huge shutdown of Mark, I think, towards the end of the game, a guy that was going nuclear. And that was the only time you saw Mark struggle, was when CJ was on him.
Yeah, I thought this was a good defensive game from CJ. There was injury questions surrounding him. I mean, it was reported shortly before the game that he hadn't been practicing and probably wouldn't play. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, he's probably going to play and he's going to start. They weren't sure how many minutes he was going to play. He got subbed out for Jakari pretty early, and Jakari had that monster dunk.
Where was that? What did that come out?
Crazy. Like, Jakari's good for one, every 6 or 7 games where he just shows something like that. He had that crazy poster. I forget who was against, but he had that crazy poster in Big Ten play where you're just
Iowa.
Yeah, where he just punches on someone and you're like, whoa. I think for Purdue, other teams had he had a clear drive to the lane. It wasn't particularly difficult to get to the shot, but the quickness and the athleticism to elevate that quickly and hammer it before Vokatias could come over and affect the shot, all that was impressive. And frankly, it's just not something we usually see from Purdue guards. And I think other teams get to enjoy this a little bit more often. So, guilty pleasure of mine when we see one of our guys kind of get that. It's fun. But that was literally the only stat he recorded in this game was that play. He only played 9 minutes. I think they pretty quickly realized we need CJ in this game. Jakari had a couple of shooting fouls where he fouled jump shooters in the mid range, and that's obviously not what Payton wants him to do. They're more than okay to let Texas take some of those shots if they make them cool. We're not going to put them on the line, and that defensive game plan almost backfired in this game. You could argue it very strongly backfired in this game. There is something I want to talk about defensively here in a second, but on the whole, I didn't think this was a bad defensive game from Purdue. They were basically like, we're going to switch when we need to. We're going to just force them to take tough jumpers and hope that works out in our favor. And it very nearly didn't, because Tremont Mark is just that good.
Yeah, I do think specifically on the defense, the one thing they did really well was I thought the doubles frustrated Vokatitis and never allowed him to get comfortable, never allowed him to be a scorer, never allowed him to be dominant.
You say they frustrated Vokatitis. What makes you say that?
Well, I wonder if there was a UFC type move that could have encapsulated the frustration, but I think you saw it in how disengaged he was for large portions of this game. Like there was a lot of, he was doing the classic thing we've gotten on Purdue guys for doing, where it's like instead of actually just playing the game, he just gets frustrated and like is throwing elbows, is whining to the officials, is whining to his coaches, he's in foul trouble, he's in bad spots half the time. And I think that the doubles were like the cause of that, just because they sent a double on every catch. He never got comfortable. He's not a great passer out of the post either. Like when he caught the ball about 8 feet from the basket with Clough on his back, he wants to make a move and go to the rim. And he's been really good at that recently. And that's part of why Texas has been on this run. And
he had 0 assists in this game. And the one turnover where he tried to take out CJ's jaw.
And I mean, that was crazy. Can we talk about that for a second? That was one of the more vicious elbows I have seen in college basketball in quite some time.
It was so bad that the announcers were like, man, CJ's lucky he was that close to Vokatitis and didn't catch the full force of the elbow.
Because they're like that I went back and forth. My cousin is a Big 12 fan, lives in California, and big basketball fan. He's like, that's a basketball move. He's clearing space. I was like, come on. That wasn't close to a basketball move. Like, we've seen guys rip through high. We've seen it. We've also seen, Purdue fans themselves, after seeing Haas and Edey play for so many years, are very used to seeing big guys just sometimes make moves, and your elbows are at guards, face level.
Chin level.
Height, that's how height works. But this one was like a Vokatitis felt CJ on his back and like threw a vicious elbow at his head. And
this was a dirty play, and it's kind of like Vokatitis
genuine intent to injure. There was genuine intent to injure there, I think, and a gross play, and hopefully Vokatitis kind of can look within himself and kind of get away from that, because that was ridiculous.
I mean, on the clearing space, like, you're entitled to your space. Typically, at least in the NBA, the differentiator they use for like a basketball move in that sense versus throwing an elbow is whether your elbows are horizontal or vertical.
Yeah,
right.
And that's a good rule.
If Vokatitis was like doing this and caught CJ, they probably don't call an offensive foul, and they probably just stick with a cylinder foul they ended up adding to that play, right? Which we've seen them do before in the tournament. This was not the first time for Purdue fans who are like, what do you mean a cylinder foul? Like, they've overturned calls like that before, and also pretty consistently.
Legally, they are able to do that. That is in the rule book. They can tack on a cylinder foul, same as they can change a charge block at the monitor based on restricted area stuff. They're able to call a cylinder foul at the monitor.
This was not him like doing this. This was a sideways, like, WWE gonna crack down elbow that he threw into CJ's chin.
He didn't even try to make it look like he was making a basketball move. And there was a follow through there. That was crazy to me. I thought he should have been done after that, but ball tech.
It would have, again, NBA, the way they differentiate flagrant 1 versus flagrant 2 in the NBA, wind up, impact, follow through. There's a chance that he would have been tossed in the NBA. But that they did, when I was watching it live, like, I saw some Purdue fans like, oh, he's out of here. I'm like, they're not going to elevate this. Yeah. Like, it's like they were already, and again, if you're thinking about this from the ref's perspective, like, they're already trying to like ease tensions and calm things down, and ejecting a player is not going to make that,
especially
better.
In a Sweet 16 game too. Like, as an official,
in a close game like that, like,
those guys are trying to avoid ejections at all costs. That was pretty crazy. That's up there with like kicking guys in the nuts or taking someone out in the air for me, because that was pretty.
It was rough. I mentioned there was one defensive thing that I've noticed from Purdue that
Yeah.
really bothers me that I want to talk about. Have you noticed how Purdue has been defending inbounds out of bounds or like inbounds plays?
Yes, I hate it. Oh my god, I hate it. I understand the concept of wanting to put your big on the inbounds. Every single time it happens, it always we never make the matchups like we never kind of switch our matchups around. It always just ends up with like Braden on the center and Clough on the point guard. And it's like it always just results in a mismatch. I think we give up so many buckets off of it. I prefer the Braden jumping off the like starting on the ball and trying to track down the ball being passed to force a turnover. I think that had wildly more success than putting Clough on the ball.
I truly don't understand. This
I
has
just
been
there aren't
annoying
many
me like all season.
there are very few situations, in my opinion, I think that you actually get serious value from putting real size on the ball. Now, granted, there are some of those situations, like late shot clock situations, certainly put your big on the ball and make that inbounds pass harder. But when a team has 30 seconds to run offense, they're going to get the ball in probably. Even if they like, when you have 30 seconds, you can just throw it, you can lob it over the center into the backcourt and have somebody go track it down and then run an actual offense. But the issue is that those easy passes that get inbounds that don't put Purdue in a compromising position off the inbounds play just result in 15 seconds of offense with Purdue trying to guard guys that they have no business guarding.
I completely agree. It's been in my notes to talk about, and then I keep forgetting to bring it up for like the last month. Like I think the thought process is like they want to blow up the initial action, which they're usually pretty successful at doing, and that makes sense if you're like, there's 3 seconds left on the shot clock. We don't want them to get something easy cutting to the rim.
You don't want to let a blob look. You don't want to give up an easy blob look with 3 seconds left on the shot clock. But
right. So I get that, but it really annoys me when there's like, oh, they Purdue just got a foul on the okay, 20 seconds on the shot clock. They're inbounding the ball and Clough standing over the point guard on the out of bounds line, and then it's Purdue willingly getting cross matched on a baseline out of bounds play. I don't understand why they do this, and it leads to so many mismatches, fouls, easy buckets. Multiple times against Texas, they got the matchups they wanted in that situation and scored off of it.
Yeah, I mean, and it's like it's one thing to do to employ this strategy when you have a very athletic, versatile, switchable team. Purdue's not that. Like I think that is, and that's not even supposed to be like a knock. Like you don't have to be a super switchable, versatile team. You do if you're gonna do stuff like that, though. Like if you're gonna employ strategies like that, you have to be able to switch and just. I think Braden is a better defender than he gets credit for. I think people act like he's a bad defender. I don't think he is at all. Fact of the matter is he's small. Like I think he would agree he's small. Like especially compared to centers and power forwards on other teams. And I hate seeing Clough guarding Jordan Pope while Braden guards Vokatitis for no reason other than we wanted to blow up the initial blob action that we probably would have just stopped anyway. Like I kind of think that if you look at it, sure, if you give up a good look on a blob 25% of the time, that's not fun. You don't want to give those up, but it's probably a lower points per possession just guarding it normally than allowing these teams to have 20 seconds of cross match mismatches anywhere they want. And then like not only that, now you've got Clough and guarding a guard on the perimeter, and now you can switch guard to guard. Like Texas did a lot of that. They would have Clough on Pope, and then Pope would run like a little rub screen for Tremont Mark or Dalen Swain, and Clough. I mean, as much as TKR was good enough to guard those guys, Clough couldn't. I mean, he's just not quick enough, and it's not really a big like. Yeah, no shit. He's not quick enough to guard the 6'7" first-round draft pick wing.
Yeah,
no one's expecting him to be, but also we don't need to put him in situations where we see it that often.
This might be, unless you have anything else you want to add on the Texas game. I know you have a hard out coming up here, so it might be a good time to move on to the Arizona preview portion of this episode. As expected, the number 1 and number 2 seeds in the West will face off for a spot in Indianapolis and a chance to keep playing for a national title. Both of these teams entered the season with pretty high expectations, though I'd say it's fair to say that Arizona has exceeded those so far, and Purdue's underachieved relative to their number one preseason ranking. But Purdue just kind of took it to Michigan, a team very similar to Arizona, and stylistically, just 2 weeks ago. So there's a chance that Purdue can do the same thing here. Where do you want to start with the Wildcats?
Let's start with where they're vulnerable, because I think a lot of people, myself included, often look at this Arizona team as this monster, invincible, inevitable team. I do think that there's one kind of glaring red flag on this Arizona team and a profile that has a lot of neon green all over it on Ken Palm. Um,
If I may,
yeah,
I
go ahead.
believe I know what you're talking about here. It's their 3-point rate.
It is. They're 363rd in the country in 3-point rate. They only take about 26% of their shots from three. And they make up for it because they're so dominant inside, and they also have such high level mid range shooters. But with that, you can turn this Arizona team into a math problem game, I think, a little bit. And it would not shock me to see an elite offense like Purdue, who's the best offense in the country right now metrically, outscore an Arizona offense that lives off of a lot of tough twos. And I think if Purdue brings that same level of physicality and intensity inside that they did in the Michigan game, I think that they can make life difficult enough for Arizona in a 2-point from 2-point range that Purdue will be able to outshoot Arizona. That's a tall ask though, because asking guys to step up and match Koa Pete and Mo Krivas and even guys like Karchenkov and Tobe Awaka, physicality wise and stuff like that, is a massive, massive ask. But as you mentioned, we saw this team do it to a front court, one of the few front courts in the country that I think is better than this Arizona front court, and that's Michigan. And Purdue punked them in a single game setting for a championship. So with a Final Four berth in Indianapolis on the line, like, it wouldn't shock me for these guys to come out hair on fire. And you kind of expect that in an Elite Eight game, but they're going to need it.
So this is really interesting because I do think you're right. But Purdue's defense is also vulnerable to the things that Arizona likes to do. They do not have a great 2-point percentage defense. They don't block a lot of shots. They give up a lot at the rim. Arizona, if they can, is going to feast on that, even in a way Michigan doesn't want to. Like, there is no team in the country better at getting to and scoring at the rim than the Wildcats, and they are going to try and punish Purdue inside. And you have to like the matchup if you're Arizona. You have to like the ability for guys like Burries and Bradley and Karchenkov to get to the rim, for their bigs to be able to score at the rim off putbacks or even designated post touches. I think Koa Pete is going to be an interesting matchup. I think Drake can match him physically, and he's not a major threat to step outside and shoot, but the battle on the boards between those two is going to be pretty titanic, I think. You mentioned their low 3-point rate. The only problem is that they're a top 40 team in 3-point percentage. Like, they don't take a lot of them, but they're very good at making them when they do. And that's partially because they know who their shooters are and who they aren't. Like, you don't see like a lot of like 30% shooters going like 1 for 6 in big games because they just don't let those guys take those shots. Right. And Jaden Bradley, Braden Burries, both excellent 3-point shooters who take most of their 3-point shots. Anthony Del Orso, only 33% on the season, but he's a guy who can go like legitimately like 5 for 6 and win them a game in big moments like this. And he's done it before against some pretty high level competition. So he's not a guy you can just leave on the perimeter.
Yeah, he's a little Tremont Mark like too, where he gets very hot and he gets very cold sometimes. And when you have a very hot Anthony Del Orso game, he hits 2 or 3 shots that you're just like, wow, like, you can't really do anything about that. That's just a really, really tough shot. I mean, he's a good player, but there are games where he just goes cold. I mean, he's a 30% 3-point shooter that has games where he goes like 5 or 6. I mean, he is a nuclear 3-point shooter when he's hot, but when he's cold, he's abysmal. And I think, I mean, you made the point. It's clear. Like, they have two good shooters in my eyes. And in fact, I really only think they have one. I think Braden Burries is the good shooter. Bradley is a 41% 3-point shooter. 26 to 64 on the year. Like, that's a pretty low volume sample size to me. That, and I'm kind of the belief that if you're shooting over 40% and you're only taking 2 a game, you should probably be taking more, unless you're only playing 15 minutes. But Bradley plays 30.
The problem is they don't need to.
No,
Like I
you're
think
right. You know,
that's part of the thing with this Arizona team is I think some of the traditional math about 3-point percentages goes out the window because they're so elite elsewhere that those no matter how good they are at 3-point shooting, those are generally their least efficient shots, right?
fair.
And I think it's not quite to this level, but it's a little bit like Zach Edey adding a 3-point shot his senior year. It's like, why would you ever let him take that? He'd have to be like a 50% 3-point shooter to make up for him not taking those shots at the rim. Like that's a little bit the math here this Arizona offense, where they're just so elite at the rim and in the paint that it's like, why would we bother upping our volume from three? We can hit them when we need to. And that's kind of the way they've operated this season. But I do agree. Like, if you're looking for a way to attack this Arizona offense, if you're Purdue's defense, you don't have the personnel to just like play them straight up and hope you win. You have to sacrifice something. And that's kind of been the story of Purdue's season, but that's never more true than in this spot. If Purdue wants to get to the Final Four, they're going to have to find a way to slow Arizona down. And they don't really have the personnel just like check ball and try and stop them one-on-one. So I think it's a very easy to envision what Purdue's defensive game plan is going to be. They're going to pack the paint. They're going to bring extra help. They're not going to over rotate and get themselves out of position and allow driving lanes. They are going to let Arizona shoot. They're probably not going to try and help even Bradley. They're probably going to help off of everybody else. And they're going to dare Arizona to become an outside jump shooting team.
Yeah, Burries is the only one I think that is really terrifying as a jump shooter on a game-to-game basis. Like, he has been the consistent shot maker for this team, I think. Bradley has been a consistent shot maker in the mid-range, but he doesn't take enough threes for him to be a consistent shot maker from three-point range. I think you go under on every ball screen other than those for Braden Burries. And honestly, I think I would like to see a kind of a defensive game plan that ball screen coverage differs based on the player in this one. Like, I would like to see heavy drop against Jaden Bradley. Make him live and feast in the mid-range. And if Jaden Bradley hits 12 mid-ranges and sends you home because you lost by 6 and Jaden Bradley had 32, you have to tip your cap because Arizona's just that good and they can do that to you. I would like to blitz Braden Burries, though. Let's make him uncomfortable. Get the ball out of his hands. See if you can force some freshman mistakes, especially as a guy who doesn't handle the ball a ton, but does a little bit for this Arizona team. He's the one dangerous volume three-point shooter, I think, on this team. I mean, Del Orso is the guy that's capable of going like nuclear in one game, but Burries is a 40% three-point shooter on high volume. He will hit shots if you leave him open. And so I think you need to force the ball out of Burries' hands. Make this a Jaden Bradley game. Maybe that's crazy, saying make this a game where the Big 12 Player of the Year has to go win it. I was
literally about to say, that's Big 12 Player of the Year, Jaden Bradley to you.
It is Big 12 Player of the Year, Jaden Bradley. But I think the thing with Jaden Bradley, and this is, I mean, I'm coming at this from Purdue probably should not be expected to win this game. Like, I don't think Purdue would win 5 out of 10 times. I think Purdue would win like 3 or 4 going into this. But so you kind of have to have a little bit of single game variance, I think, in this to win for Purdue. And the way to create that is by forcing Jaden Bradley to score on volume in the mid-range, I think. And if you can force Arizona to live with Bradley mid-ranges while you're taking threes on the other end, that is a very winnable game for Purdue, I think, especially if you don't just get murdered on the glass.
So let's this and talk about what Purdue needs to do to win. And we kind of talked about we might be able to attack Arizona, at least on the defensive end, right? Like, what are the ways they can try and slow down this Arizona off? Not many. They're going to kind of have to rely on some variance, shot-making variance, like we've talked about. I think they have a hope of staying with Arizona in this game. On the other end, Arizona could say the same thing. Like, this is the number 1 offense in the country, Purdue's, that is, and they're going to have to hope that Purdue doesn't just shoot 50% from 3, which they're liable to do sometimes, right? And fingers crossed they got their bad shooting night out against Texas, because they're going to be in the same building again tomorrow night, and they're going to need to go a lot better than 4 for 20 from 3 if they want to keep this game close, let alone win.
Oh, for sure. We've seen this Purdue team before shoot really well on volume. So it wouldn't shock me at all to see this Purdue team just hit like 15 threes. And if Purdue hits 15 threes, it'll be a tough ask for Zona to kind of combat that, especially given something we haven't touched on. There's 2 different things I want to touch on before we get into like 5 or 10 minutes on like Arizona specific stuff, there's two toss ups for me. The first is a team specific one. The second is a player matchup. The first
All
one
right.
is tempo. This Arizona team likes to run, and if Purdue can slow the game down, this has been an Arizona offense that has put up some gaudy offensive numbers. Like you look at it, for example, the first game of the year when they played Florida, they went 2 for 5 from 3 and put up 93 points. They only scored 1.14 points per possession though, and I think that's where you see that 3-point volume come into play. This Purdue team is capable of putting up absurd points per possession numbers in super low possession games. And while Zona has been able to kind of be an avalanche type team where they just onslaught you for 40 straight minutes, if Purdue can slow them down and turn this into a slow game and win the tempo battle, I think the 3-point variance thing comes into play a lot more because you don't have the 2-point dominance that's just so consistent that you don't have the possessions for that to even out.
I've criticized Purdue's pace throughout the season. This is one of the places where you really want to choke the pace because
I mean,
I've always
this should look like a Ben McCollum Iowa team where you play like 56 possessions.
Yeah, because I've always said, like, the reason I'm critical of Purdue's pace is because when you're the favorite, you want more possessions, right? Part of the reason the Texas game was so close is because Purdue played 61 possessions in that game. Purdue was getting consistently better looks. They couldn't ever separate, partially because Tremont Mark was incredible, but also because they played really, really slow and let Texas stick around in that game, right? Like, that's what you see from favorites whose purpose. Now, Purdue's not the favorite in this game. They are clearly the underdogs, as they should be. Like, this is going to be an uphill battle for Purdue to win this game, as we've kind of outlined. Fewer possessions will help Purdue in this game. You kind of mentioned like Purdue wanting to win the math problem. That helps when there's fewer possessions for Arizona. Like you said, fewer possessions for Arizona to dominate in the 2-point range. When there's 90 possessions, every Jaden Bradley mid-range rim out doesn't really hurt that much. In 60 possession games, suddenly every missed shot matters that much more, right?
Especially if Purdue can put pressure by hitting a few shots on the other end. And small sample size, like if you play a 60 possession game, you hit 10 threes, that's tough to combat. It just is. And Purdue's capable of doing that.
Yeah. And, that's going to be the key because you mentioned Arizona likes to run. They are one of the fastest tempo teams on both ends of the floor. Like they force short possessions on defense and they run real quick and score quickly on offense. There's not a lot of late shot clock possessions for Arizona. I'm sure Purdue will try and force some. They'll have to if they want to win this game. What was the other swing thing you had? You mentioned more player specific.
Yes, there is a matchup between two players that I think could go either way, really. These are two really, really talented players, two really good players that do some similar things, but they're in vastly different spots in their career. I think this Koa Pete Trey Kaufman-Red matchup is pivotal because I look at that as a matchup that I see either guy could potentially win that. And I think that, I think there's a world like Trey Kaufman-Red really outplays Koa Pete. I also think there's a world Koa Pete really outplays Trey Kaufman-Red. And I think if Purdue wants to win this game, they need good Trey Kaufman-Red. They need the Trey Kaufman-Red they got against Texas. And now Arizona has a lot more resistance than Texas does, so he won't have the efficiency and the dominant stat line that like you saw against Texas, but he has to be a force on the glass. He has to be good defensively, and he has to, produce offensive shots. He has to make shots. If he can get to 15 points and 10 boards while playing good defense, I think you feel good about that as Purdue, but that's a matchup that I think is two guys that like to dominate 2-point land. Not only that, they both live off of super inefficient, terrible shots that they make at a crazy high rate as opposed to most other people in the country. Like Koa lives off of tough middies. Trey lives off of that 14-foot floater that is like the worst shot in basketball, but he makes it like a 70% rate, so it doesn't matter. If either of those guys are missing those super inefficient shots, that's bad news, I think, for their team.
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned this matchup earlier in passing, and I agree. I think it's the biggest swing matchup in the game because Koa Pete doesn't carry the offensive load as consistently for Arizona as Trey Kaufman-Red does for Purdue, but you mentioned they take similar shots. They have similar builds. They're both a little bit under the rim. undersized fours who
I
are
don't
maybe
think
not
either
at,
one's a big mismatch for the other either. Like we looked at Texas and we were like, well, Cam Heidi can't guard TKR, but like also can TKR chase him around the perimeter? Like there's none of that for TKR Koa. It's two bruising physical bigs who
they're
live
going to
off
try
of
and go
tough
through each
twos
other's
and
chest on
rebound.
every possession.
Yeah, and we'll see who is able to succeed. There is a world Trey gets Koa in foul trouble. I'm not sure the same is true the opposite, just because Trey is a little bit more around the rim than Koa is. I think Koa is a little bit more of a jump shooter than Trey is, especially because Krevis is kind of their main post touch guy, as opposed to like Trey is the main post touch guy, while Clough gets some secondary touches in the post. And
Right.
so I think if Trey gets like there's a world Trey gets Koa and foul trouble, and if that happens, Purdue all of a sudden feels really good about their matchup at the four. I think you see like Karchenkov get some minutes there probably. You also see Tobe Awaka probably play a good amount there if Koa's in foul trouble. But I think we get a special matchup between those two. And who do you think wins that matchup? I'll put you on the spot.
Oof. I'll take Trey. I think I trust his game a little bit more than I trust Koa's. Uh, you mentioned it. Like they take similar shots profile wise, but they look aesthetically very different. Like Koa is much more of like the fadeaway midi type, whereas Trey has his patented floater, which somehow gets longer every time he makes it. But also, like he's a much more around the rim player, like you said. Like he'll like we saw what he did to Merez Johnson. Like he made Merez unplayable in that second Michigan game.
And
And
it
there's a
was going through his chest at the rim too, not like
right. Not like
making
he's just like, oh, I'm hitting my floater further than you want to step out, because Morez could handle that. This was
right.
like, I'm going through your chest, you're fouling me or you're getting out of the way, and I'm scoring. And also, like, he was really good against Michigan the first matchup, too. Like, he didn't have the high level efficiency, and obviously Purdue lost that game, but he was Purdue's leading scorer. He was arguably the best player on the floor in that game on either team.
I think like Ken Palm MVP in that game. He had 27 and 12. He's
Right, in
awesome.
a like a 12-point loss for Purdue,
Right.
which is really crazy to get a KenPom MVP when you lose by double digits. Like that just shows how dominant you are, and that includes two ill-advised 3-point shots that he tried to take in that game when he was really desperate. That kind of mess up the numbers there. But in all seriousness, like I trust Trey in these moments, and Trey winning this matchup doesn't mean Purdue will win this game, but it would go a long way towards it. And if he's able to win that matchup, I think you have to feel pretty good about Purdue at least staying connected to an Arizona team that can be liable to blitz them the way Michigan did in Mackey Arena.
Yeah, and I think that like to that point, I think if Trey wins that battle, Arizona could still very well win. If Koa wins that matchup, there's not a world Purdue wins this game. Like
Yeah.
Purdue needs Trey Kaufman-Renn to win this matchup to win this game, and even if he does, we're not saying that that's going to guarantee a win for Purdue. But if we don't get Trey Kaufman-Renn out playing Koa Pete, I think Purdue loses this game, and that's just the case. Before we get
Real
out of
quick,
here, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say real quick, maybe we're going the same direction. We should probably talk a little bit about Braden. We haven't really talked about Purdue's best player at all in this video, which seems a little bit crazy, but he didn't have a great game against Texas. He ended up with 16 points on 16 shots. Had some tough turnovers where he kind of dribbled into nowhere and didn't know what to do with the ball, which we haven't seen from him in a while. So only 5 assists. He's going to need to be a lot better in this game if Purdue's going to win, right?
Yeah, for sure. You need a brain, A plus brain, even like get the jumper going, get the passing going for real, and let's rock. Sorry, excuse me, I'm struggling right now. I think we get a bounce back game from Braden, and not only that, but I have a feeling there is something to him playing. I think what we would consider like a C minus game against Texas, and almost losing. And I think like I saw the look on Braden's face when he went to go celebrate with Trey after Trey hit the tip in, and it was like it was like excitement, obviously for the win, but almost a sense of relief because a player that good and who's accomplished as much as he has does not deserve to go out losing a game where he has a bad performance. And I fully think we'll get a bounce back from Braden. I think this is the game the jumper starts coming in again. I think we're done messing around with double digit seeds. We're done messing. We're here. There is no more like, oh, let's get to the second weekend and then like the real battles of the tournament start. No, we're here. It's the Elite Eight. It's the best team in the country across from you. Everybody's picking their guards. Everybody likes their guards. They have Big 12 Player of the Year, one spot, and a future NBA starter, probably an awesome NBA player for a long time at the 2 spot. This is the game that everybody picks against Braden historically, and then Braden comes out. It's awesome. And so that's kind of what I expect. And I'm interested to see how Arizona guards Purdue, just because they have so much size, but also Jaden Bradley is like a legit, really good point of attack defender, and they'll probably stick Bradley on him. We have seen Braden struggle against length. I would say that's the one thing Jaden Bradley does not bring defensively, is length. Very athletic,
physical,
very strong, tough.
He's not that much bigger than Braden.
Not really any bigger than Braden, and he's not throwing crazy length at him. And so with that, I think Braden's sight lines will be kind of open to an extent. And when Braden has open sight lines, I trust the passing. And you need a great Braden game, and I think we're going to get one. We're due for one. We just are.
We're due for one. And there is, like, Arizona will occasionally go to a switching defense where, like, Krivas will match up against someone on the perimeter. A little bit reminiscent of when Braden went on that crazy run in the second half of the Michigan game where he just kept getting Mara switched on to him, driving to the rim, and either scoring or getting fouled. So we'll see. I know you got to go here in a second, so let's transition into preview or predictions. Excuse me. This whole thing is going to preview. Let's see. What does KenPom have the line as? A 4-point win for Arizona, 80-76. What do you think happens here? How do you see this game playing out? Who do you take in?
I think this is a legacy game for the 3 seniors. I think we get a great performance out of Trey. I could get a great performance out of Braden. We haven't really mentioned him, but I think we get a great performance out of Fletch. This is the classic, like, oh, Karchenkov is going to dominate Fletch. Then, like, Fletch has, like, 22 on, like, 4 for 5 from 3, and it's just like, oh, yeah, Fletch actually rocks. Like, we forgot about that. Fletch is awesome. And I think these 3 seniors, I could see this game swing either way. I'm going to take Purdue by 2 in a battle, just an absolute battle. I think Arizona has a chance to win it at the end too, and misses a shot. I don't think that these 3 seniors are going to go out without giving us a special performance. And I think we see a special performance in this one. Whether they go home or not, it's going to be a coin flip game to me, but I think we get a special performance from those 3. And I think with the math, the way it works out, give me Purdue in a super low possession game, a super high efficiency game. Give me Purdue like 76-74 and something that's in a game under 60 possessions.
We both picked these 2 teams to meet when we did our bracket preview live stream, and we were split on who would win it. We are still split. I'm taking Arizona in this game. I think, the chaos in the South region aside, the tournament has largely played out the way we expected it would. Michigan, Duke, Arizona have kind of coasted thus far. Michigan and Duke will play tonight, but Arizona at least hasn't truly been challenged yet in the tournament. And Purdue really struggled against Texas. I think they're absolutely capable of beating this Arizona team. They proved that against Michigan. But ultimately, I just think Arizona is too efficient. I think they'll jump on Purdue early. Purdue will be playing from behind. You don't think it'll get to like a super big lead, but I do think Purdue will be playing a couple possessions behind most of the game. Maybe they're able to close it a little bit late. I think Arizona pulls it out. Give me Arizona like 79-68. And like you said, a low possession game that Purdue's just not quite able to get over the hump.
Yeah, I could see it going that way, unfortunately, as well. I stand by this game being a coin flip game to me. I think this is a game that we get a great performance out of Purdue. I think they get up for this game. I think Purdue also has done fairly well. I think when you kind of see them take on these elite teams and everybody acts like the elite team is 8 points better than they are. I mean, I know KenPom has this as a 4-point win, but I'm pretty sure DraftKings, it's already been bet up to like 8.5 if you're looking for actual sports books. And Purdue seems to respond in these spots. I mean, they responded in the last spot when it was Michigan getting 6.5 points in the Big Ten tournament, and we saw what happened there. And Purdue seemed to take that notion that they couldn't hang with Michigan a little personally. And I think that there's some very similar rhetoric being thrown around right now around this Arizona team with Purdue. I've seen a lot of like Purdue has no chance against this Arizona team, and I think we're all letting an Arkansas team that was a dream matchup for Arizona cloud our judgment a little bit because we like Acuff so much. And maybe that's a crazy take, but we're talking about an Arizona team that has no, or an Arkansas team that doesn't really have a front court, doesn't really take threes, and likes to run. Match made in heaven for Arizona. That is not the case for Purdue. Good front court, does not like to run, slows the game down, and shoots a bunch of threes. So we'll see what happens. We will be here to recap it regardless, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. And thanks for listening, everyone. I really appreciate it.